Oh, shalom, my friends. Shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And what a joy, what a thrill, what a delight I am having right now to be talking to a playwright, a writer of plays for many years now. He's probably best known for actually writing the book of a musical called Avenue X that was done off Broadway and really all over the country, all over the world. But he's written so many other plays that have been done in places like the Public Theater and Hartford Stage. He was at the O'Neill Center, the Kennedy Center, Seattle Repertory, even, pardon the expression, New Jersey rep. Not the repertory part, the New Jersey part. It's New Jersey. But also, he's a journalist. He's written for the New York Times, for the Village Voice. He's been a novelist now for several years, so writing in a longer form. So, ladies and gentlemen, won't you please welcome the award-winning writer, John Jileer. Shalom, John.
Shalom, shalom, Saul. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us. And let me ask you, Jileer, I cannot tell from your look or from your name. What's your background? What religion are you? What background are you? What are you?
Well, Jileer, actually, the family name was originally Zahila. When my grandfather, as a teenager, arrived at Ellis Island, the name was too cumbersome for the immigration officials, so he shortened it to Jileer. But I am on my father's side a Russian and partly Turkish Jew, and on my mother's side, Irish.
Whoa!
So they had to get married at City Hall, and both families were so bitterly opposed to the marriage that nobody came. And my reaction
Not
to
even
that,
on the
actually,
wedding night. I'm sorry, yes.
no, not on the wedding night. So my reaction to that has always been, thank you. There are two religions I can eliminate immediately.
Well,
So
well, the thing is, or you get drunk constantly, but it's on Manischewitz, which is a really terrible.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
So are you essentially atheistic at this point, or what is your belief system?
Well, it's funny, the older I get, the more I gravitate towards Judaism, which was kind of
Keep talking.
I resented as a child, was crammed down my throat. I declined to be bar mitzvahed.
Wow.
And for years and years, I considered myself to be lying naked in a mountain stream was my way of worshiping. So I didn't, but frankly, the older you get, I live in the summertime on Fire Island, block from a synagogue. So the ancient sounds waft towards me on the high holy days. And I find
Those
that,
just gay men having sex?
no. Fire Island
Going,
is really,
no.
yeah, that's really quite a misconception about Fire Island. The gay section is small and somewhat isolated, and there's a Catholic section, a Jewish section. We're like Darwin's finches, specialized along the Galapagos. It's very, but these ancient sounds that come to you um, on Yom Kippur, for example, which I now celebrate, because frankly, it's a more meaningful way to observe the new year than putting a lampshade on your head and getting drunk. Fasting, going inward.
So do you fast 24 hours, 25 hours? Do not.
I do, and I sit by myself, and I find, well, the fasting, you get a little spaced out, and the thoughts come more easily, and you go inward, and you take a moral inventory, and I think it's very valuable, frankly.
That is the purpose of Yom Kippur. It's to not
exactly.
just have halitosis all day. It's to
Yeah,
just be with or away from your fellow man and go, hey, what have I done right this year? That
right.
was quick. What have I done wrong this year? All right. I'll try not to repeat that. I'll repeat that. But I'm not going to do and basically this is how you take stock in yourself.
You take stock. I mean, not that I am suffused with guilt and feel that I have a lot of sins to atone for.
Yes.
I pick and choose from the Judaic tradition.
Yeah,
So that's where I am at this point in my life.
Now, next question
Spiritual.
is the
Yeah.
invariable one that every playwright, every writer gets. When did you realize you wanted to be a scribe?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a great question. When I was a kid, my very best friend was the son of a man named Jay Blackton, who was the musical director of many of the Rodgers and Hammerstein hits of the 40s and 50s. He was in the pit with the baton, leading the orchestra for South Pacific, Oklahoma, The King and I. In fact, Jay Blackton is credited with giving Richard Rodgers the idea of extending the O in Oklahoma.
Oh
He said,
no, because
Dick,
initially
this
he
would
was
be a
going to
good
do,
idea.
yeah, he was
Yes.
initially going to do Oklahoma. I didn't
Yeah.
work. You know,
No,
he
exactly.
left.
He said, no, Dick, lose that, extend the O.
Yeah.
So anyway, so my friend Billy and I, at the age of 7 or 8, would go and watch rehearsals. We'd go sit in these plush velvet seats in the Longacre Theater, and we'd watch the rehearsal. And I will never forget watching the dress rehearsal of Call Me Madam,
With
starring
Merman.
Ethel Merman. There I am, about 20 feet away from her. Now, mind you, she's reaching the back row, and I'm 20 feet away. And my most vivid memory, and maybe this is a hallucination, but it's her larynx quivering in, you know, her mouth, the size of that voice. And for some people that might have been terrifying, but for me it was inspirational. And I thought, I want to be up there.
But let
And
me ask you one question to keep you in that moment.
yes,
So the thing we all think we know about Ethel Merman is that she would tell the directors, like, okay, once it's frozen, it's frozen. But you saw her in rehearsal. So
yes,
was she changing things? Was she asked to change things before it was frozen? And was she malleable? Or did she freeze herself and say, I'm done?
that's a great question, Saul. But I frankly, my memory is just overwhelmed by the sound of that voice. Mind you, I was, like I say, 20 feet away, and the sound was truly penetrating me. And so I became an actor when I became of age. That was my first baby steps into the theater were on the stage.
And did you study, or I forget where you went to school? Was that your track in college? Of
Well, I was a bit of a hippie for a long time. Lived in the woods in Canada with nothing but a horse and sleigh to get around on. Truly, what the magazines called the Back to the Land movement of the 70s.
well, it was Thoreau. It was Walden. You probably read
It
the
was
books when you were
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. That was my early hero. But I did have this inclination, as I said, to be on the stage. And ultimately, when you're in the woods of Canada, huddling besides a wood burning stove, you have to ask yourself, where is the stage that I'm going to be on? Not here. So I ultimately returned to New York, the city of my birth, and began auditioning. So I spent the first 10 or 15 years of my professional life as an actor. Um,
All right.
but
Every sentence you say, I want to stop you and ask another question. So,
of course,
first of all, how long were you in the woods in Canada, like living like a lunatic?
about 3 years.
Three. Even Thoreau was only like a year and a half, 2 years on his neighbor's property. He wasn't. He was
Exactly.
such a hypocrite. He was such a lunatic. No,
Yes.
did you. What was like? Did you have revelatory moments where you were on acid half the time? And what got you through living like a bear?
I won't pretend that I didn't dabble in psychedelic drugs, but the main idea really was, for a city boy, I was born and raised on the island of Manhattan. For a city boy, riding around on a horse and sleigh was as exotic as going out with a chorus girl would be for a country boy. It was an absolute 360. And And it wasn't. I thought,
But
and
it's
then
also the kind of thing a city boy could do on vacation over the summer in the Catskills, as opposed to spending 3 years, facing imminent death.
well, Saul, it's either call me an extremist. It's either the woods of Canada or the middle of Manhattan for me. I guess I'm not a suburban kind of guy.
So at a certain point, you stopped wanting to perform in front of chipmunks and beavers. Well, beavers you always want to perform in front. It's rather different. But
Yes.
yeah, so you go back, and do you remember your worst audition? Like the thing where you just went out and like, why did I come back here for this?
Hmm. Boy, there would be a lot of candidates for that. I think that I would have to say that I answered an ad for well, actors will do anything, and when they're young and looking for an opportunity to, and anybody can put an ad in backstage and lure actors to an audition. So I went to an audition one day for something called the White Mask Theater, and we did a number of theater games and audition things, and we were all told you're in, you're part of it, and now the first rehearsal is going to begin. And so we were given these lines to read, of very bad poetry, and it began, and we were told by who was running, whose name I'm going to withhold for the moment, um, that we were to recite these lines standing on a sculpture that she led us over to, a larger than life, turned out to be a larger than life sculpture of her own breasts that she had created. Now, the idea, in other words, we've all heard about self-indulgent things in the theater. This took the cake. The idea was we were to stand around on this enormous sculpture of this woman's breasts and read her poetry, which was terrible. So I, so that was a little disillusioning.
Wait.
But
Did you, after the rehearsal, did you quit, or did you actually go through with this in a theater, standing on this woman's styrofoam tits?
no, no. After the no, I believe it was. I don't think styrofoam was the medium, but that's not really the point. I after and no after this audition slash first rehearsal, I emerged with a couple of other very disillusioned young actors. We got very drunk in the White Horse Tavern around the corner where Dylan Thomas drank himself to death, and we never returned to the White Mask Theater. So,
Ah,
anyway,
I thought, you read about these things in backstage and the casting call, even now, that it tends to be more like just a lure to get women on couches and things like this. This was
mhm.
actually somebody just really deluded in thinking they have talent and something to say. But that doesn't
Yes.
sound so bad. It's just like, but what about a rehearsal that you nailed for something great?
Hmm. Boy. Well, let's see now. Um, boy. Well, we're talking about my greatest moment as an actor. That I have to say, there's some. First of all, my own daughter is now an aspiring actress, and I
She has my
applaud
sympathy. Yeah.
applaud it. She has my condolences and my congratulations, because I think that training as an actor is a wonderful thing to do for the human organism, for your voice, your emotional state.
Yeah.
However, there's something very passive about the acting profession in that you have to wait to be cast, chosen, anointed. And the older you get, the more time is limited. And so I think it's a very natural progression for if you have any inclination or gifts as a writer to kind of shift from one to the other. Because as a writer, I can get up in the morning and write, and without anybody's permission. Not that I can immediately sell it, but it's a more pleasing to the so-called mature personality.
But let's also be clear that I should have mentioned this earlier, that the show that people can see you in, that you wrote, so you're doing both acting and
Yes,
writing in one. So you can, if you self-produce, you can certainly put yourself on stage and write, but this is what people can see. The Twilight Theater Company is presenting.
Yes.
Are you the Twilight, or is there another organization that's presenting?
No, the Twilight Theater Company is a wonderful company, led by a couple of amazing people, and they do great things. And I feel incredibly lucky that they're producing this show of mine.
Now,
They
this show
produce,
of yours is called
yeah,
the Rosenberg slash Strange Fruit Project, and it's
yes,
done off Broadway at 59, excuse me, 59E 59 Theaters, which amazingly enough is located at 59 East 59th Street in Manhattan. And
yes,
it's you. There's also a clarinetist on stage named Sweet Lee Odom, which was
correct.
actually my birth name before I changed it to Rabbi Sol Solomon.
Yeah.
Directed by Margaret Perry. But please tell us what. And this is not the first production of this show, so please tell us, what is the Rosenberg Strange Fruit Project?
Well, it's been quite a journey. It was incubated, if you will, at Playwrights Horizons, which is kind of my artistic home, where I've had a couple of things done. Then it was done at New Jersey Repertory Company, which you mentioned earlier.
You mentioned New Jersey. I can't.
And then last year it was done at the Edinburgh Festival, where it was nominated for a British Offie Award, OFFIE, which means off West End, essentially.
Sure, yeah.
Their version of our Obie Awards,
And this was
essentially.
Edinburgh Fest, not the Edinburgh Fringe. This was
The Edinburgh Fringe, right? The
was
Edinburgh Fringe is part of the Edinburgh Festival.
yeah.
And so now here we are doing it at 59 East 59. So it is, to me, a pretty remarkable story. We all know about the Rosenbergs,
Oh
I
yeah.
presume. And when the Rosenbergs were executed in the early 1950s, they left behind two little boys who essentially watched their parents
Well,
die in the public square. I mean, it was
yeah.
an unimaginably horrific thing for these two little boys. They were then adopted by the man who wrote the song "Strange Fruit" that Billie Holiday then seared into our consciousness. So when I heard about this little factoid, I thought, my God, that's remarkable. And I kind of saw this as my way in to talking about American politics from then until now, when from a certain point of view, not much has changed. So I'm playing all the parts. The little boy, his mother, the judge, Billie Holiday, and about half a dozen other people. And the clarinetist with whom I am on the stage is a world-class musician, a phenomenal young woman. The clarinet being the unifying sound between Jews and blacks, who are really the crux of the whole thing. Klezmer and jazz being, the clarinet being the ultimate interpreter of those sounds. So there we are up there, the two of us, for an hour and 20 minutes telling this story. And I couldn't be prouder of it or more excited. And we opened in 3 days, which is a little terrifying, but
July 10th, I should tell,
yes,
and you have until August 4th. So
correct.
it's like a showcase. It's 3 weeks running at 59E 59 theaters. It's not a showcase, but it runs is about
Right.
3 weeks long. Yeah.
Well, it's actually an off-Broadway contract, seven shows a week. So people have a lot of shows to choose from. And it's an amazing theater, by the way, one of the great off-Broadway facilities. I feel very, very lucky to be there.
59,
Yeah.
they built it, I'm going to say recently. It's been more than 10 years now, but it was meant to be a complex, like
Yes,
sort of like what they did with Theater Row theaters over, a few blocks away.
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, in the journey of this piece, like, have you made any changes between the last actual staging and the one you're doing at 59E 59? Or was it frozen? It's kind of fully there. Yeah, I haven't touched a thing.
Well, it's never frozen, because there I am, the writer and the actor up there with a certain amount of freedom. Of course, there's a limit to how much you can screw around when the lighting booth is sitting there waiting for their cue and the musician is But this amazing musician, Sweet Lee Odom, is has an improvisatory bent herself. So we feel free to occasionally want to go off on a tangent, but not too extensive a tangent, because theater is theater, and um, the curtain goes up and it comes down at a certain point.
Now, I have to
But
say, one of the things that I would say is almost disappointing about your career is that you've done so few solo shows.
hmm,
There's a video clip I watched of you on the interwebs, which is where you watch video clips, and
but,
you're telling this story just about this French teacher that you were absolutely
yes,
enamored with, and it's a wonderful story. You have a wonderful way of telling it, and yet you've been in the theater so many years, and I see only like two or three solo performances under your belt. Why didn't you, once you stopped being an actor, why didn't you just write more shows for you?
well, it never occurred to me, but now, of course, I deeply feel that anybody who has had aspirations to both those crafts, acting and writing, should give it a try. I mean, absolutely. But I think that it just, well, when you're young and callow, it seems like a stroke of ego to get up there to write something for yourself. And I don't know, man, I've gotten over that. It's
Oh yeah, I got over that when I was 4 years old. But let me
yes,
also ask you though, you
yes,
had a level of off-Broadway success with the musical Avenue Q. I mean, I'm sorry, not Avenue Q, a couple of blocks over, Avenue
right,
X. Oops.
yes,
And this is going back about 20 something years now.
yes.
So let me ask you, at that moment when that was playing, and then suddenly you got this regional production and that production, did you feel like, okay, and I'm allied with Playwrights Horizons, did you feel like, okay, I'm gonna be the next Wendy Wasserstein, I'm gonna be Lanford Wilson, I'm gonna be, and then doesn't quite happen. How did how do you keep writing after when you think at least, all right, I'm going to be a professional playwright. This is going to be my thing. I'm going to have a show in New York every 2 or 3 years. What happens?
Well, I have other sort of avenues. One of which is books. Um, Shortly after we did Avenue X, I wrote a book called Sleeping with the Mayor, which is a nonfiction book about a homeless encampment that sprang up on the lawn of City Hall Park to the fury of the then Mayor Koch.
Oh, gosh,
It
of
was
course. Yeah.
so it was a I began writing little dispatches about it for the Village Voice, which absolutely adored the idea of Mayor Koch being infuriated by these homeless people and trying to get rid of them. But the more he tried to get rid of them, the more the press embraced them. And these homeless people became, for an instant in the history of our city, uh, sought after guests at cocktail parties and even boudoirs of liberal Manhattan. It was a great story and irresistible to me. And so that book was named a New York Times Notable Book of the Year. So that was a sort of success in another area. So I really am, as a writer, basically a creature of the theater, but I have,
Well, you have a recent book. I think it's no, it's not a novel. Isn't there one about a neighbor that you found out might have been a murderer or a serial killer or something like that? Am I confusing you with someone else, or maybe I am? Oops.
you might be confusing me with somebody else.
Oh, forgive me. Forgive me. There was a
Yeah, no, that's okay. But yeah, the nonfiction novel is a form that really interests me. I guess the seminal example of it would be In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, a true story, but Truman attempts to embroider, amplify, spin a yarn, essentially, with the truth. And Hunter Thompson is another one who comes to mind. Arguably there's a basis of truth in the stuff, but there he uses it merely as a springboard. And so I love that form, and I've done it a couple of times.
What is your most recent book? What is the most recent novel or nonfiction novel? If
Well,
you
I've also written a book called Dark Wind, printed by St. Martin's Press,
mm,
which is about a hurricane on Fire Island, which, as I've mentioned, I have a summer home. Um, uh, Many years ago, a hurricane named Gloria,
yeah, oh yeah.
which you may remember, was making the weathermen quake in their boots. It was putting up numbers that were unseen up until that point. And it was determined that the point of landfall was going to be Fire Island itself, at which point everybody left, except for me, because I, as a teenager growing up on Fire Island, had always been willing to hurl myself into these things just for the rush of it, as we used to say as teenagers. And in fact, as everyone was taking the ferry off Fire Island, I was the one of the only people going in the other direction. And I had met on the boat a lovely young actress who also felt that it might be fun to weather this storm. So suddenly I had visions of us doing this together. You know, sugar plums danced in my head, so to speak. But then a couple of days later, as we were preparing to weather the storm and barricading ourselves in, there was a knock on the door, and it was the Coast Guard asking for the names of our next of kin. At which point we said, "Okay, I get it. We get it."
It took that. Yeah, because the thing is,
It took that
they still have to rescue you if
exactly.
something bad happens, you know?
So I left finally, and I thought everyone had left. But the next day, as I was cowering in this Red Cross center in Babylon, across the
Oh,
bay
yeah.
from Fire Island, the word began to spread among us that there were 6 people who had refused to leave Fire Island. They could not be threatened, frightened, cajoled, nothing. So that was the moment this book, Dark Wind, was born. I had to find out who these people were and why they had done this and what happened to them.
Was one
So
of
I,
them a hotsy totsy actress, or she came away with?
she went back to New York to audition for something. She was yeah, it was a momentary fantasy that never materialized, Saul. But
Was a fire on
any,
Hurricane Island more than that? Yeah, basically.
yes. So anyway, I spent the next several months seeking out the survivors of these 6 and trying to get inside their heads and trying to find why does somebody do something? Why does someone put themselves in the path of death?
Yeah.
What and the answer was different in every case. And so um, it's a book about the inner landscape of the mind and the natural arena of Fire Island, which is kind of an astonishing place. Um,
And
so
the
anyway,
name of the book is Wind. What was it called? Wind.
Dark Wind,
Dark Wind from St. Martin's Press.
St. Martin's Press, and it's out now also an ebook if anyone cares to, is any
People do
interested
care.
in it.
This is why
Yeah,
we're pushing things. This is why we're
yeah,
telling people to go see the Rosenberg Strange Fruit Project at
yes,
59E59 Theater, starting on July 10th, running through August 4th. So go and
correct.
get your tickets and see that. Now, do you have a couple more minutes, or I know we're coming up
Oh,
on?
absolutely, absolutely.
Oh,
This is
great, good. Okay, good.
yeah.
This is good. So, because I do want to ask you, since you've been a playwright for so many years, who
Mhm.
are the playwrights that formed you, that you love? What plays made you go like, whoa, besides Ethel in Call Me Madam? But yeah, who else?
Well, it's so interesting. I mean, oh golly, well, certainly Shakespeare,
Oh yeah.
because every summer out on Fire Island, I direct a Shakespeare play with young people. It's part of what I do out there. And uh, my amazing discovery was that there seems to be a white hot connection between Shakespeare and the average smart-ass middle school child of today. They seem to really get each other, which is mind blowing to me. So anyway, but Shakespeare certainly, as an actor, I fell in love with Chekhov because with Chekhov, if you're in a Chekhov play, there is never a problem understanding your motivation. You want something that you're never going to get. It's just like the
Him
futility
being
of those
Jewish. Yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
is from some points of view hilarious. Um, so I love Chekhov. I love Noel Coward. I love Beckett. I love Pinter. I love Stephen Adly Gurgis. Um, I love all my brothers and sisters who are in this racket, or many of them.
Now I just want to backtrack slightly. What Shakespeare play are you directing with the youth this summer?
Well, this summer, my vision has been realized, which was all along to get it to the point where the children would direct the older children would direct the younger children, and I could simply remain on the beach sipping a daiquiri while they came to me for an occasional question and then return to rehearsal. So it has evolved to that, and this summer they're doing Romeo and Juliet with a couple of brilliant young teenagers directing it, and I couldn't, and well, of course, I'm going to be not there anyway because of doing the Rosenberg project.
Right.
So it's all kind of worked out well.
That's just absolutely wonderful. Is there a name of that theater company? I mean, do they sell tickets? Do people go, or is it
Well,
just
it's all free,
yeah?
and it takes place in a beautiful little garden on Fire Island that a very wonderful lady turns over to us for the purposes of doing this. And people come with their beach chairs and their cocktails, and the pep talk that I give these actors before they go on
Yeah.
is that people the adults are coming, they are going to plop their beach chairs down, they are going to stir their drinks, and they think that they're going to see something adorable, young people in tights speaking these strange words, and then they'll go home and have another cocktail. Instead, these people are going to understand Shakespeare for the first time in their lives. That is the pep talk that I'm giving to these kids, because
Wow.
it's we're willing to sacrifice the iambic pentameter for the truth of the words. Um, and some of these kids are wonderful young actors, doing Shakespeare for 6 or 7 years, um, since they were able to talk, and now they're wrestling with puberty, and they're still doing it, and it's kind of exciting, actually.
Romeo, oh Romeo, what for? Right, yeah, that can happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. By the way, we're talking with John Jiler, novelist and playwright. You said you're a child, a creature of the theater, even though you are writing novels. Do
Yeah.
you get different levels of satisfaction from completing a play versus a novel, or is it about the same? Do you prefer one or the other? What?
Well, with a play, the fantasy of the playwright really is that you're in a tuxedo, pacing in the back row with a cocktail, and that, it's out of your hands, kind of.
Can I ask you?
And
You know what? Another question. I know
yeah,
I interrupted you in that one. Do you have a drinking problem? You
no,
talk
I
a
don't.
lot.
For some reason, this format is inducing all of these drinking metaphors, but no, I've actually, in fact, it's funny. Oh, when we did this Rosenberg Strange Fruit in Edinburgh last summer, I did, in fact, have a vision of myself doing the show, and you do it every day, by the way, during the month of August. It's truly exhausting.
Oh wow.
Um, I had a vision of, doing the show, then having a few single malt whiskeys, seeing a few other shows, carousing through the night. But I'll tell you, Saul, at my stage of the game, a solo show like this, and if you come and see it, and I really hope you will, is an absolutely exhausting athletic event.
Oh wow.
And there can be no drinking, there can be no carousing. It is absolutely demanding
Now
physically.
speaking of carousing, you shouldn't you talk a lot about women and you're married with kids. I know you have a kid. The kid wants to be an actress, but
Right.
how long have you been married? Right?
I've
You're
been married for almost 30 years, actually.
awesome. So wait, when
Yeah.
was Hurricane Gloria?
Hurricane Gloria was in 1985,
Oh, so it was before. All right. Okay. So you
shortly before we were married. Or no, actually quite a while before we were married.
so is your wife? What does she do
Well,
besides?
my wife is a college history teacher,
Oh,
and she is actually the one who walked in the door one day and laid this remarkable little factoid on me that the Rosenberg orphans were adopted by the man who wrote the song "Strange Fruit," which was the basis of the whole thing.
Yes.
So it's a wonderful marriage, but the only tension in it is, of course, that as a historian, she deals in theory with fact, and I, of course, um,
No, does she get mad when you fudge? Because she obviously is going to read everything you write. Does she go
well,
like, "You can't do that. This is people are going to read your book and think this is how it went."
the way it manifests itself often is, I'll be holding forth at a party somewhere and saying, "Oh, 10 years ago, blah, blah, blah." And she'll say, "No, it was actually 9 years and 8 months ago. I remember because blah, 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 blah." So she occasionally interrupts the flow of my narrative, Saul.
And that's
But,
going to smack her
that's,
around a little bit.
well, so
No,
you,
kidding. So one more question for John Jiler though is you do you have you must, especially since you write novels, have a writing daily or weekly regimen as opposed to just writing when you're inspired? Do you get up, get caught, like this is my writing time every day? How do you do it?
well, it's interesting. I'm not a teenager who can wake up at 3 in the morning, smoke a joint, and then write madly for 10 hours. Now it's a blue collar job. I have to punch in and sort of make an appointment with myself and keep it. And it's a regimen actually that I got from reading the. Do you know Raymond Chandler's work?
Well,
He,
I've
he-
read a noir book or two of his. Yeah.
yeah, Farewell, My Lovely. This he's a very odd character, British educated, um, who then came to this country and found that the only job he could get was as a night watchman in Los Angeles in a factory which was visited during the middle of the night by occasionally by a squad car from the LAPD. And listening to the squawking over the police radio, he became entranced with the underworld and crime and everything else. And that's how he began writing. But his regimen was that he would set aside 4 hours every morning during which he would allow himself to do nothing but write. Now, he had two rules. First of all, um, he didn't have to write if he didn't feel like it, but he couldn't do anything else. He couldn't get up, make a phone call, write a postcard, nothing. He was completely welcome to sit there for 4 hours. And of course, eventually you're just forced into the manuscript. So
I mean, and he couldn't even go on TikTok. So this really he
no, nothing, no. Yeah, and in fact, the computer I write on has no modem, so
So what was his other rule? If he had to sit there for 4 hours, you said he had two rules. One was
well, one is you don't have to write if you don't want
you
to.
know,
You can just sit there for 4 hours,
right.
but you can't do anything else.
No, so there's got
So
it.
therefore, you are sort of compelled,
And so do you
impelled.
really take four? Do you get up at like whatever 6 in the morning and 6 to 10? Well, you have to eat, but or what?
Well, on Fire Island, where I am lucky enough to spend the summers, I have a little espresso pot, a little Italian espresso maker shaped like hourglasses, little metal things.
Yeah.
I put it on to perk. I jump in the ocean, and by the time I've returned, it's perked. I pour myself a cup, and then for 4 hours, I madly scribble, and then I collapse into complete incoherence for the rest of the day. So,
And here's the other deal of are people waiting? Are you on deadline? Do you get commissions? Or is there an agent waiting for you to finish something? Or do you have to be the chief cook, bottle washer, and engine driver and then go like, oh, I finished something. Let me
mm,
get to my agent.
well, everything is different. I do have a wonderful agent, um, but every project is well. Right now, I'm on an extreme deadline for a novel that I've just finished. But other things are, I think that writers have something, ideally, you have something that's up, like this Rosenberg Strange Fruit project. You have something that you're kind of about to spring on the world. I have a new play that's going to be a workshop at Labyrinth Theater
Yeah.
in a couple of months. And then you have something in the back of your mind that's gestating. And hopefully all of these will ultimately be little income streams that will join to make a mighty river of money. But it doesn't always work.
Yeah, 59 E 59. I'm jealous that you have 3 weeks of a show there, but it's
Mm.
not gonna put your kid through. Well, she's already through college and being an actress, but yeah, no, or even the Labyrinth Theater is a small-ish theater company.
It's small, but the idea is that ultimately it will. I mean, but the 59 is 59th is a the tickets are 40 or 50 bucks, and as the writer and actor, I'm entitled to a
Well,
generous
yeah,
cut of
gotta go
that.
to the Claring, I
So
guess.
it becomes
Yeah.
yeah. So that there are when this Dark Wind became an ebook as opposed to just a paperback or a hardback, then you get another little bump, and you cobble together a life, a living.
How have I?
And it's a volatile one. Don't get me wrong. I mean, raising two kids and putting them through school and with the erratic income of a writer is tough. But you have a path about which you're passionate, and to me, that's a tremendous gift because I honestly think that 95% of the people in this world are trudging off the jobs they hate. And so, if you're inflamed about something, why then
Actually,
I'll
so
take it. Yeah.
you haven't met. What is your other kid? Are they artsy? The other, because you mentioned the
My other child, my son, who's a bit older, is a climate change warrior. He's just finished a graduate program about that, and he that
so he's
treats the
for climate change.
well.
He's
No,
basically
he's
always
a
against it.
guardian against it.
Yeah, yeah.
The politics of climate change are his raison d'être, and I'm very very proud of him. And and in light of current Supreme Court decisions, although that's quite another topic,
Totally other
and I'm
topic.
not sure we have time for that. But
Well, we do have
anyway,
time to remind people that we've been talking with JOHN JILER. Now, the current play that he has going is called the Rosenberg Strange Fruit Project. You can see it at 59E59 Theaters over on 59 East 59th Street in Manhattan. It's running from July 10th through August 4th. Do get your tickets now. Last question for you, John, if you're willing to say, what is the show that you're going to be doing at the Labyrinth or workshopping at the Labyrinth?
well, it's a show about sexual obsession, which in some ways is my specialty. I mean to say that when I was a young man, my life was taken over by love obsessions and almost ruined a couple of times by things but when love goes badly, you know, I don't know about you, but sometimes I am tempted to look at somebody who's 20 and say, oh, to be young again. But then I remember what it can be like if love goes badly at that age.
Yeah, because your
And
wife
I
is
think, and
dumping
I think,
hot
no,
water on
thank
your
you.
head when you're thinking of that. Of
Oh
course,
my
because
God, yes.
she reminds you. It's like, oh, you're looking at that 20-year-old. Here, yeah, love hurts. Oh,
Exactly,
no, we
exactly.
get that. But and yeah, you have the experience to know that that it looks so. You want to be passionate and love and this, and then you're like, no,
Mm,
no. Yeah, having an old, long-term, loving relationship is the thing. This is
yes,
what it's all
because
about.
at that age, it can take over, truly, and relentlessly,
Oh, I mean, so do you have
and be
time to
very.
tell one because I don't know what's going to be actually in the show. That's not an
Mhm.
autobiographical one, is it? It's going to be a
Uh,
fiction. Or,
I'm
the show you're doing for the Labyrinth is that going to
Yes,
be
yes, no,
horse?
it's purely fiction, but it has its basis in a reality that we all know, I think.
Oh man. So
Yeah, so yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Now I don't want to let you go without you telling like one story of obsessive love that almost ruined your life. Are you willing? Can you go
Well,
there?
I will say only this, that the first time it happened to me, I wound up in a psychiatric hospital for a while.
Oh, all
The
right.
next time it happened, um, all I had to do was go to a kibbutz in Israel and work for 6 months under the hot sun, which will, in the same way that our parent, I went out, by the way, not out of any Zionist zeal, but in the same way that our parents might have joined the French Legion to forget, it was you
Yeah.
work your ass off in the hot sun, you forget your name. And then the third time it happened, I only had to drive around the United States in a Volkswagen bus with a dog for 5 months and wind up in the woods of Canada. And now I'm a happily married older man. So you see, ultimately, you thread your way through it all. But
Well, mit Mazel, I'm glad you came through the other side, not burned to a cancerous crisp from the kibbutz, not
yeah,
not tied up in a rubber room in the psych ward, but writing plays and performing on stage at 59E59. John Jiler, just a lovely, lovely time we've had talking with you.
indeed, me too.
So shalom to you and much, much success. Break many, many legs with the Rosenberg Strange Fruit Project and everything that you'll be doing thereafter. Thank you so much.
Shalom, shalom, Sol. Thank you so much for having me. Bye
Shalom.
bye. Best of luck. Jai.